April 1977, Kieta to Honiara, Solomon Islands. Our sail to Kieta had some highlights, first diving in the Duke of York Islands, on some interesting coral patches, and collecting some fresh water from a creek on New Island, visiting remote Nissen Island, and interacting with the local yachties at the Kieta Yacht Club. We visited the huge Bougainville copper and gold mine. Then it was time to clear customs from PNG and head for the Solomon Islands. On the way, a few stops and road trip into Buin before clearing into the Solomons. Our last stop in PNG was at Kangu Beach, an open roadstead anchorage, but the weather was calm, and we were only away for a few hours. A land trip to Buin, some by PMV, but also a lot of walking, and in thongs. The people in Buin were renowned for their fine basket weaving. We wanted to buy some away from tourist shop prices. We now had to check in at customs at Shortland Island to enter the Solomon Islands, into Koravu for customs at the Kulatanai police station, anchored between Fazy and Shortland Islands. A small border office that did everything, it seems. Shortland Island to Vella Lavella Island, into Matu Siroto Bay on Vella Lavella. This was another World War II conflict area. The US established a forward control center in Matu Siroto Bay after the Allies captured Vella Lavella. New Zealand soldiers landing at Vella Lavella. NZ soldiers with an abandoned Japanese boat. The locals showed us this wreck. Probably a World War II Japanese carrier-based Nakajima A4N biplane fighter. Matu Siroto Bay to Baga, Ombavu Island. Baga to Liapari Island at the south end of Vella Lavella. A complicated entry to the Liapari harbour. We hope to clean and antifoul the boat on the slipway at Liapari. Here I am checking that the keel is sitting correctly on the cradle before the final lift. Then the tractor does the main job and pulls Dreamtime up and out of the water. Ready to go back in. With a clean bottom, it was off to Gizo on Gizo Island, the capital of the Western Solomon Islands, to anchor off the harbourside business buildings and wharves. Pat and Maxine had already arrived. Checking the hookah compressor after some maintenance. We noticed the straighter hair of this group, showing more Micronesian or Polynesian ethnicity than the local Melanesian of PNG and the Solomons. Leaving Gizo, we passed by what became known as Kennedy Island, the island where President John Kennedy and his crew swam to when their PT-109 boat was sunk in World War II. Going quietly on one engine, they couldn't accelerate away in time, when an unlit Japanese destroyer suddenly appeared. Kennedy received a medal for organizing the saving of all his crew. The coconut he carved a message on, then sent off with natives to an Australian coast watcher. It sat on his desk in the White House. Across to Ringi Harbour and the timber logging company on Columbangara Island. Columbangara is a dominant island landscape. Into Ringi Harbour, where we were fed very well by the company management. The Japanese fishing boats were very active in the 70s. We moved on to the next major town called Munda, but first traversing the Diamond Narrows. Then winding our way around reef patches to Munda, on New Georgia Island. Another major airport left over from World War II. A major airport constructed by the Japanese, then captured by the Allies. It became the busiest wartime airport in the Solomon Islands. Now called Munda International, after a recent upgrade. From Munda to Uepi Island on Marovo Lagoon. Stopping at Egalo, Viru Harbour, Sega Point, then Uepi Island. Munda to Egalo on Rendover Island. Into Egalo Harbour. The SDA missions heavily promoted the wood carving local industry. We bought this one. A bamboo organ, often played by paddles cut out of rubber thongs. Absolute seaside frontage cottage, build cost low, position priceless. Local lads enjoying our departure. Across to Viru Harbour back on New Georgia Island. Common in the Solomons, big log canoes carved with transoms to suit outboard motors. Viru to Sega Point, another stop to post mail. Sega Point, another significant airport from World War II, now the main airport for the growing Marovo Lagoon tourism industry. An old wartime photo of the airstrip and area. Being prepared for a recent upgrade from dirt strip. after the upgrade. Then the first flight in. Segi to Uepi Island, dodging reef patches all the way. Uepi Island, no resort in 1977, only a caretaker, 2 houses, workers' quarters, and other infrastructure, owned by the young couple at Liapari. For sale in 1977 for $65,000. Island 2.5k long. If I'd had the money, I would have jumped in. Soon after, a group of young Australians bought Uepi. They established a small diving-oriented resort. Uepi is one of many raised coral reef islands bordering the large Marovo Lagoon. The reef drop-off on the northern side descends almost vertically down, 1 kilometre or more into New Georgia Sound. We dive a lot, but I've had to borrow the following photos. It was just so impressive. From Uepi, we ambled down to Batuna, stopping at a few places along the way. Chinese man's plantation residence, family and house in Honiara. He fed us well and plied us with many beers. This village headman insisted that I wait for him to put on his best shirt, before I could take the photo. His child was very scared of these strange white people. A piece of the local money the chief brought out to show us. Batuna is an SDA mission school and vocational college. Leaving Batuna and Marovo Lagoon, we crossed to the Russell Islands. We spent a few days, then continued on to Honiara on Guadalcanal Island, down to a suitable exit channel out of Marovo Lagoon. Overnight anchorage, then out through the Barrier Islands, and across to the Russell Islands. With no wind and motoring, our wind-operated self-steering doesn't work. So, sitting out in the rain steering is miserable. Into an overnight anchorage to warm up and dry out. Then around to Yandina. Into Yandina, where our liver health was severely tested at the Executive Club. And later, on a visiting Banks Line copra cargo ship. Lever's brothers, Soap, had significant plantations of copra, coconut, in the Russell Islands and throughout the Solomons and Pacific. Their Solomons base was at Yandina, and Banks Line ships transported the copra to their Sydney soap manufacture operation. To Luan Island to visit an SPC researcher, Jim Prescott. Jim was looking at capture, holding, and transport methods suitable for lobster for the local fishermen. Jim built and furnished his house out of a $2,000 grant. across to anchor overnight on the northwest tip of Guadalcanal. Then down into Honiara. Removing modern-day wharves to show the anchorage at the yacht club. A pleasant morning coffee spot while we waited for Rolly and Robin to arrive from Townsville. And evening beers weren't too bad either. We discovered the ship loading at Yandina was in port too. Again, testing our liver health with duty-free drinks aboard the ship. Next a circuit from Honiara to Tavernipupu via Maleda. Rolly and Robin join us. We explore Honiara and the Matanico River. Dive on wartime wrecks near Honiara. And more at Ngella Islands. Cross to Langalanga on Maleda Island. And see a different canoe building method. Then finally anchor at the private Tavernipupu Island.